Welcome everyone to Autogefühl, your #1 resource for in-depth car reviews. Thomas here today is showing you the all-new Ford Mustang. For our American friends, it's not that new because the car is out in the 6th generation now since the end of 2014, but for all our European fans, and especially in Germany, it is really all new because only the 1st generation has been sold here in Germany. In 1964 was the 1st generation actually. And now actually it's finally available from the manufacturer itself in Europe here again. So it will be very exciting here, especially for our European friends here today, with the V8, the Coupé. We do have the V8 that is available worldwide. And behind me is the Convertible, we'll also show you today. And in this case with a very special engine here, the 2.3 liter turbo engine. So V8 naturally aspirated, 2.3 liter turbo engine. And it will be very exciting if this engine, the smaller engine, and can actually also match the bigger one, or which you should actually go for. So thank you very much already for tuning into Autogefühl, and today we're taking a look at the exterior, interior, and of course at the driving experience of both engines. Let's start with the exterior, with the Coupé. In the front here we see this huge power dome, and I really love this strong hood of the all-new Ford Mustang. And I think what they have done with the exterior is they've found a good compromise between this very strong design and also a little bit of elegance. I think it has a little bit more elegance than the previous version here now, and that might open the Mustang also for new customers. Let's continue here with the front. We see the huge pony logo, and the front grille in this comp structure is a little bit different in the V8 version than in comparison to the smaller engines. Then let's continue on with the headlights. We see the LED signature in this tiger claw structure, a very beautiful thing in my opinion. And we already got a sporty bumper here in the lower part. Some very details are different in the American version, and if you own an all-new Ford Mustang in the US, you maybe can tell us more about that, which difference you see here from the EU version. But in general, with this one Ford strategy, Ford is going on worldwide now, most of the parts are really totally the same. Let's look at the side profile here in the Coupé version. This is the V8, as I've told you, and it already comes with special features. 5,000 euros extra here in Germany, because 34,000 euros is the entry price for the 2.3 liter turbo engine. And in the US you get the V6 as an alternative to the top V8 version. However, the V8 version here, 5 liter in capacity or displacement, comes already with special alloys here in black, 19-inch. And with the special Brembo brakes, you got the Brembo brake calipers and the special disc performance here, the bigger brake disc, because the V8 is faster than you also need bigger brakes. So, and just from design, you see this typical Coupé design line here and the strong muscle car, and that's really so beautiful, and you hardly find that with any other cars. And we really wonder if this car will shake up the sports car market in Europe, because so far you only had to import it. Now it's really coming from Ford directly again here to Europe. And I mean, the price is relatively cheap if you compare it to other sports cars, and especially considering what engines you get here. So there might be a lot of changes on the sports car market with that one. Just looking at the side profile here, I think I always prefer the Coupé just from the design. But of course, I also love driving a convertible. Well, I want to hear your comments on that already now here, if you would rather pick the Coupé or the convertible. We're coming to the convertible later on. By the way, one design line I want to show you as well is that we got the dropping line here, which divides into light and shadow on the right height here at the door handles. I think that's also a quite clever design choice. As for the rear, I think the same counts as for the front. It is very strong, got this muscle car design, but at the same time I think it is more elegant than the previous versions. Very prominent here with the quotations of the past, with the headlights, and here in the V8 version we got the GT badge, whereas in the lower engine one we got the pony logo here at the rear. And what else is different in the V8 version, you don't really see it from the outside, just at the end of the exhaust, but it's a different exhaust, a sport exhaust in here. As I said, not so much in design change, but the sound is way different. Looking at the trunk, it's opened below here. Sounds a little bit weird when opening. See, it doesn't sound like a premium car. Let's look inside. It's the trunk of the Coupé here, and well, you can't fit too much in there. Sound system here on the right, subwoofer. I think it's quite narrow, so you have to think about it's of course not the most practical car. No spare tire here, but some more space, and just when scenting it, well, it scents a little bit like chemicals. Not too good. Let's get inside. Let's take a seat. These ones here are the optional bucket seats, so they are not from series equipment, even not in the V8. You have to buy them optionally. These are the Recaro seats, and they offer you even more side support. Later on in the Convertible we will also see the standard seats. The special Recaro sport seats are very well protecting here, especially in the shoulder region. So for example, well, that would be especially good for the racetrack. However, just from the first seating impression, they are not uncomfortable, because you know some sports seats are very uncomfortable, but these ones make a good impression so far here. Let's move a little bit forward. And what has Ford done? They have especially worked on the interior in the Ford Mustang. And just from the visual part here, I think it has become really better, especially if you look at these very broad aluminum parts here. But let's just focus here on the seats again first, because you see we have a perforated structure here, because optionally you also get a seat ventilation. But what is not so good, at least here in Europe, is you don't get the fabric seats from the standard equipment. It's always with the leather seats included, and you know I'm not a fan of leather seats because it harms animals and also you sweat on it. So that's the basic overview on the seats here, and we'll test the other seats later on as well, as I said, so I can also give you a recommendation then which seats to pick here actually. Let's now dig into the details. You see this Mustang badge here. I love these small details when they include such things. And then this broad aluminum, as I already mentioned it, this is very beautiful and also looks high class. Here's this matte aluminum style, brushed in one direction. Great feature for a sports car. Here on these small details you see it is a Ford, yes. And it doesn't look too much high class here, but then again you have to think in comparison to other premium sports cars, you really pay less money for it. Then let's move down, and you can also turn on the ignition that we see something of the screens. We got this cockpit airplane style here, for example, for the DSC, or here for the warning indicators. And moving up here, we got the new Ford Sync system that already reminds of other Ford cars. You first of all got touchscreen here that is available. You can here, for example, also check the climate and change everything. The reaction time is, let's say, I've seen faster ones, but it's generally okay. For example, for the climate here, this is actually not a button, but here, if you push them down or up, then you can also change the temperature, because I think it's always important that you not only can control the temperature with a touchscreen, but also have some manual buttons for it. Or how do you see it? Here also the 2-zone climate And by the way, the rear view camera is also included from the serial equipment here. I can show you later when I start the engine and put it in rear wheel drive. And you see here it's the rear view camera, and when I turn the steering wheel, we can also see where we are actually going. So that's about the rear view camera. Let's move on here to, this is the manual gearbox, 6-speed, optionally as also a 6-speed auto gearbox available. When driving, I'll tell you what I think about this manual gearbox. I would definitely go for the automatic gearbox, even if it's a sport car, because I'm just a fan of automatic gearboxes. I also want to hear your opinion on that one. Let's move on to the steering wheel. Just how it feels, I think I have felt better steering wheels, but it's quite soft. You see that behind the surface, you can put it in a little bit, and that adds a little bit to the comfort. I also think it's maybe a little bit too many buttons on here, and they also do not look too much high class. So you definitely feel and see some differences to other premium manufacturer sports cars, just from the haptical side and also from the visual side. But then again, it's a muscle car, and as I said before, you also pay a lot of money less for this car. I mean, if you think about, you get some other sports car for this kind of money, but which do not offer the emotional appeal of this car whatsoever, and then it might be worth taking a while here still. So this is the basic overview of the interior, at least for the front. Let's just take a small look at the trunk and also at the rear compartment. Maybe you won't use the rear seats too much, but just to know they exist, and then let's go driving. Let's get in the rear compartment, and there's no real useful entry help for that. You can just put the back side of the seat, and then, well, there's not a real automatic slide or something like that. You really have to put the manual slide function of the seat in the front. Then it's possible to get in the back. But then to test how I would be seating, I need to move it back manually. And let's check. Oh, it's really hard to get in. And there's also not too much space, of course. However, the car is still quite long. Well, just from my knee space, it does really fit. For me, it's 1.86 meters in height, but then I got no head clearance whatsoever. So basically, if you transport some adults, they will get neck pain. So I would rather recommend only putting children in back here. And that's actually possible because you also got this ISOFIX system here in the back, so you can also put a child seat in there. That's actually quite good. But basically, not really a car for more than 2 people. Finally, let's take a look beneath the hood. 5-liter V8 naturally aspirated, but no hydraulic dampers whatsoever, so I need to fix it manually up. I think it's a quite beautiful engine design here, where we still can see something here. And again with this big 5-liter logo. 418 horsepower, and I'm a fan of this naturally aspirated engines, I've told you before. Also because they're actually not so fuel consuming as they are supposed to be, because when you compare the stated figures and the real figures, the naturally aspirated engines don't differ so much, but the small turbo engines, they often go quite up high in the consumption than if you really push them. But we'll also compare that one later here. So now I'm really looking forward to this engine, and maybe let's turn it on for the first time and now that you can really hear it. So let's now start driving the V8, and just when running very slowly here now, you already hear this V8 sound, which is already very emotional. But at the same time, you can also drive the engine quite calm. That's absolutely no problem. The manual gearbox, actually, I'm actually quite astonished. It's very good. It feels also high class and quality. And just when you're going a little bit on the throttle, you hear this V8 sound, and that's something very emotional, and maybe also the main reason to go for that engine. And furthermore, with the naturally aspirated one, you don't have any minute where the turbo sets in and then you get the acceleration. You get it right away, actually. And it's actually with these 418 horsepower way or more than enough already. So you got that power at any second, and always combined then with this great sound. For example, let's just hear the sound you already hear on the inside here from the third gear. Really awesome, really awesome. And just from the steering here, I go right and left and right and left. Really direct, so I can't moan about that. Not to say so, I really love it, actually. One of the best direct steerings I had lately. It's really fun. Every command from the steering is directly transported onto the road. The Recaro seats offer you a great side support. However, I do not have back pain or something like that, so they are comfortable at the same time. Especially good with the shoulder support, so they will also do fine on the racetrack. Actually, the visibility is still quite good, although we have this very long hood, so I feel very comfortable. And you also don't feel that the car is so long. It is actually quite long with its 4.78 meters, but still feels totally fine. From suspension, they have really worked on that one now here. For the first time, we got an independent wheel suspension here in the back, and you really realize it. So much more comfort than the previous version of the Ford Mustang here. And this one was crucial to introduce it in the European market. For example, now I go for the third gear to the second gear. Wow. That's just something you don't have to say so much about that. That's just pure Autogefühl, pure car feeling, I think. Even just when going straight. You don't even have to be in corners already. Just when going straight, it's really a lot of fun. But now we also are searching some roads with more curves, because then we can even better test the direct steering. That will also be a lot of fun. Just from the quality impressions while driving, yes, you have some parts which are not that premium, and well, we are not in the premium segment actually. But the point is, when you got a so emotional engine and such a fun car with so many emotional aspects, it's not that important that every kind of aspect of the car is perfect. I think this is kind of the balance they found here. They have really improved the interior. It's really a leap forward in comparison to the previous model. But I think there's something else missing if they really want to step up the level. But again, as I said, you can excuse that when you have all the other emotional features here. So, next corner is approaching. Let's now try to go a very fast corner and see if we got some understeering or something like that. It will also be exciting. Very direct steering. Oh, it just feels great in the corners. It doesn't feel, as I said, as you have this very long car, it rather feels like a compact car when steering, and that really speaks for the weight balance. So you got a really good weight balance here. Automatic smile control here from the V8. Yeah, just enjoy these corners here with me. And taking a detailed look at the instruments here, rather classical instruments here with the RPM meter in the left and right, kilometers and miles, the speed. And in the middle we got the special apps here for the V8. We see here track apps, and we go in there. First of all, there's a starting limiter, and there you can actually limit your RPMs. You can adjust it how much you want it, how many RPMs, that you know don't get to 6,000 or 7,000 RPMs when starting, because too much RPM when starting in the first gear, then just there's too much wheel spin and no real good start, so you can electronically limit them. That's kind of a launch control here for the manual gearbox. Then there's another special feature, it's a line lock. And this is actually a burnout feature. So I first hold the OK button here, then it's initialized, then I hold down the brakes, and when I then press OK, I got time 15 seconds that the front wheels are locked and the rear wheels can spin. Let's now take a look at the convertible and the non-GT version at the same time. We see we got a slightly different front grille. These comps are rather bigger, rather more open. I think I do prefer this front grille, but what about you? Which one do you like best? Looking at the side profile of the convertible, I think they have managed to improve the side line because it's rather flattened out here now, especially the hood is set in here, well, because of the previous version it was standing a little bit higher. Then they have managed to put it behind that one here very well now. And I think it conveys a very straight line, and just when it's open here, I think it conveys even more this lifestyle and the fun feeling of the car. Of course, when it's closed, the roof, I think the Coupé still looks better. What's your opinion on that? You see that the hood is really hidden here now. It's a straight line here with the seats and the trunk. And by the way, this leap in there, they are actually just heard that there are additional covers for that available, that it looks even more beautiful then, but these ones are optional. The sun has come out now, so I will really enjoy the convertible driving then. But first of all, let's take a look at the roof process. And you see now it's opened. Just count the seconds when I close the roof now. So you see, I think it goes quite fast. Also the process is not so complex. So that was the electric opening and closing. Then I have to adjust it here on the inside manually. I can show you it here in detail. You have to put this one here manually and then that way. So that's to release it, and then the electronic one works. I have seen better systems actually, because either I would put it manually all the way or electronic all the way. This is kind of a mix, maybe a little bit complicated, but it's still okay, and you see it's working still quite fast. So let's open it once again. For everyone who forgot to count, let's start. And finished. So if you do not pick the optional bucket seats, you get these ones here. They're already very sporty, and you get them from standard equipment in both versions, V8 or no V8. And you see, they already offer you a lot of side support. Again, my criticism is that you don't get fabric or Alcantara seats from a standard equipment, or at least optionally, so you really have to stick with them. And especially here in the convertible, you really sweat on the leather seats then, and you would have to buy the optional seat ventilation, but Still, that one, it's not that good actually. I can show you here how it works, but best solution is always when you got fabric or Alcantara seats available as well. But in general, like the seat form, actually the sides are not that strong. You see it here, I can push them quite hard. But in general, the form is quite comfortable. Also, the head restraint is quite close to my head, so I can really relate to it. It also adds somehow to the safety aspects. And even for tall persons, I think I got a very comfortable seating position in here. So I'll start the engine, that I can show you the seat ventilation, and we can also hear the turbo engine, 2.3 liter for the first time. Of course, sounds different than the V8. But here the seat ventilation is available in 3 levels. And I can tell you later when driving how strong it actually is, because it has to start now. By the way, I haven't shown you before here in the Ford Sync, just that you can take a look at the GPS. Here we got the split screens and the air conditioning, telephone, radio, and just one short look at the GPS I haven't shown you before. It's also all working via the touchscreen, and I was actually quite satisfied with the results so far. The reaction times were also quite fast. You can see it better as it's here right now because it's against the sun. So for your real eyes, actually you can also see it when it's sunny. So let's look beneath the hood here and talk about the differences to the V8. Actually, you might say a Ford Mustang has to have the V8. If you think it as an icon, yes, that might be true actually, but only partially, because already so far a lot of people already picked the V6, so not everyone is driving it as a V8. The V6 alternative in the US, for example, has about 320 horsepower, and this one here, the 2.3 liter turbo engine, is also at 320 horsepower, so almost the same performance output, but of course kind of a different concept then. However, the acceleration difference, for example, the V8 has 4.8 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers. This one here, the small turbo engine, is just at 5.8 seconds from 0 to 100 kilometers or 0 to 60 miles an hour. So just 1 second in the difference in acceleration. That's really not that much. But of course, just from the engine design, you see the V8 does look a little bit better, and of course the sound is different. But now we're going to experience if the driving is so different. So let's now start with a 2.3 liter ecoboost, hammer the throttle. Wow, let's higher the windows so that you can hear me better. Back and the front as well. Yeah, well, actually quite impressed with that acceleration, and then I've told you from the figures, it's not really much slower than the V8 engine, and you also feel it. But I think when you have this V8 sound, you always think that you're going faster than you're actually going. And now I think the 2.3 liter turbo engine here, for such a small engine, it already sounds quite good, but of course it's no sound match then to the V8. And so you also think that you're not going that fast here. However, everything else, suspension and the direct steering, is still the same. And well, about the consumption, we cannot test it right now here because we don't have too much time to drive both engines for 200-300 kilometers or so. But we'll do it later this year, then we can tell you something more about the consumption figures. But I guess the 2.3 liter turbo engine will consume less, but I mean it's just half of the displacement, but it won't have half of the consumption. I think a few liters less, yes. You save some taxes a year, for example, when you have a smaller engine, at least in Germany. So, well, I'm not sure how many people will go for that. What Ford is actually quite certain of, that 60% in Germany will go for the Coupé and 40% for the Convertible. But for the engine, let's see how this one is actually evolving. When you're just cruising, it's actually because you have this less emotional sound. Well, you don't tend to go that fast and hammer the throttle that often. And that makes the ride a little bit more relaxing, actually. So here in the convertible, I must say, you can argue it two ways. First of all, you can say, okay, if you're in a convertible, you want to really have that great V8 sound. But you can also say, if you want a convertible, you want to have it rather calm and relaxing for this cruising ride. So, not sure about that. What's your comment on that one? So when I hammer through here now, yes, the acceleration is definitely there, even in the higher gears. So the performance of this engine, you can't argue about that. Okay. Push it again. Yeah, and if you really put the RPMs up, yeah, also quite a nice sound here from the small turbo engine. So I think it is an alternative, yes, definitely. Yeah, but the V8 is just so emotional. So if you can afford this extra price for 5,000 euros extra, then you should really go for the V8. And of course, if you say, I don't care so much about the consumption then. But I must say, it's not that you really cannot not take the small turbo engine. So I would definitely recommend the V8, but I think it's not quite wrong to take the 2.3 turbo engine. So for such a small engine, they really did a good job here, good performance, and it's still a very fun engine, definitely. So, and about the convertible riding here, of course I always enjoy riding a convertible, and let's just test the wind features here. I think it's definitely a summer car. Right now it's about, let's see how many degrees we have. It's 19 degrees here and sunny, so it's also not cold at all. We're driving 60 kilometers an hour now and we still feel some wind coming in. So it's not one of these cars where you say, okay, you put all windows up, maybe a wind cut in the back, and then you don't feel any wind at all and can drive all season. It's rather a summer convertible where you want some warm weather. You know, we've had some tests, for example, with an Audi A3 convertible, which is actually no match in the emotional factor to the Ford Mustang, but it is a match price-wise. And then you have to really think about how many car you get for the money here. If you think about, oh, do I go for an Audi A3 convertible, which is a great car? I mean, there's no discussion about that. But if you get the same for the same price, here a Ford Mustang convertible, you really have to think about it. And then, for example, one disadvantage is if you put everything up, let's see if yes, at least we got rear windows here as well. So for example, with other older convertibles, for example, the Jaguar XK doesn't have these rear windows there, but here at least they go up. Maybe it would be good if we had a wind cut here. We don't have one here right now, so that would actually reduce some wind noise, but actually I do not see any wind cut openings where you could put in someone. You really have to ask about that one more time. But in general, I can just stress the fact it's rather a summer convertible, but as it's coming close to summer right now, I think it's exactly the right car here for this landscape and for this time. And so I can just conclude again, I would always go for the convertible, even if the Coupé looks better closed. So let me conclude about the all-new Ford Mustang here, the V8 and the new 2.3-liter EcoBoost, and the Coupé and the convertible. So it was a great mix here today. First of all, I'm quite astonished in a positive way, really. It is such a fun car, and I think hardly any other car will get so much emotion for this price. And you really have to compare prices, for example, for some other convertibles or for some other Coupé sports cars, and then you really see that you get really a lot of car here in the Ford Mustang. Just from design, I think the Coupé is my favorite, especially when you compare a closed convertible to the usually closed Coupé. And I think the design has been a great evolution because it's still this muscular car, but at the same time it has become a little more elegant, in my opinion. And then, as for the engine, the V8 is just awesome. We couldn't really test the rear consumption yet because when we're just doing a lot of fun stuff here around, the consumption is way more up. But we'll deliver that later this year probably when we do a long-term test. It's just that really so emotional engine here, and as it's naturally aspirated, the sound is really just great. And you've maybe also seen the burnout function. That's totally a crazy feature, and I wouldn't recommend doing that because then you can just throw away your tires after once. But that's a good thing. We've tested it out for you now, so you don't have to do it with your own Mustang. But of course, it's always just fun if you turn the steering wheel in one direction and really push the throttle. It's so much power there where the rear wheels that the car can be spinned around just on one level. However, here at the Convertible, we had a smaller engine, the ecoboost engine, and I was also quite amazed by it because just from the performance, it was so fast, just 1 second less the difference on 0 to 100 kilometers or 0 to 60 miles an hour. And so it's really already a very emotional engine. You can have a lot of fun with it as well. You cannot really compare the sound. The V8 does sound better, but however, for such a small engine with such small displacement, it already sounds very good, I must say, so I have done a very good job there. In the interior, it has really improved in comparison to the predecessor version. However, you know, it's not really that much premium. You see some of the interior, it looks kind of cheap or feels kind of cheap. But I think, however, you must consider the price there again. And there are so many emotional features here about this car that in this case, you tend to forget that something is a little bit of cheap plastic or something like that. So I think it's not the most important factor here. The seats were also very comfortable. I would not go for the bucket seats because these seats are already offering you a lot of side support, the standard seats. But at the same time, already keep you tight, but still offer enough space, and really feels like a good GT ride here, and it's more comfortable than the smaller sports cars. So this is my conclusion here. So I think I've really done a good job here. Such a fun car, and I think other sports cars really have to pay attention to the new Ford Mustang now, finally also in Europe. So I'm looking forward to your comments on our video and on the different versions here. Which engine would you go for maybe? And maybe also the V6 from our American viewers. And would you go for the Convertible here or for the Coupé? Share your thoughts with us and give us a thumbs up. See you next time at Autogefühl.